Welcome to Chats with Changemakers, the Northeast podcast for people who want to make the world a better place.
Hello and welcome to Chats with Changemakers. I'm your host, Kate Duffy, and in this episode I spoke to Ben Jones, who shares his journey from being an artist to founding the social enterprise Dingy Butterflies CIC. Dingy Butterflies focuses on community engagement through the arts. He shares his insights into the importance of collaboration with local organisations and the challenges faced in community work, and of course the impact of their projects. Let's go straight to the interview. Hi Ben, how are you today?
I'm good, yes. It's been a good day so far.
The sun is shining. It's a good day to be a change maker. So Ben, tell me, let's jump straight in. Tell me about your passion. What is it that you care about?
Well, my background is in the arts. I study as an artist and a curator. I actually moved up to the Northeast from a little village near Sheffield, studying my master's in arts at Newcastle University. And I was initially, I was a painter, and I started exploring different avenues. And after I graduated, I started working with other organisations, freelancing, been working in schools and working with communities. And I think that's where my passion, I think, it lies, is around working with people, working with communities in particular, and working with other organisations. I like kind of very much partnership working and exploring what other organisations do. So that's, I started working with called D6 now, used to be called ISIS Arts back in the day. And I kind of, through them and the working with them, I kind of got interested in working with people, and using creativity and art and community engagement to work with people. So I'm very kind of interested in people, I think, and working with communities, whatever that word community means. It can be many different things. So I started exploring and being interested in how do you work with people, and how can art and being creative be a tool to support people and support communities, wherever that may be. So I got more interested in the kind of more place-based communities. So a lot of my work at the minute, more through the social enterprise at Dingy Butterflies, is working very much in Gateshead and the communities around, in central Gateshead in particular. So Benjamin Saltwell, and started working down teams in Dunstan. And I'm really kind of interested in exploring communities and exploring the different aspects of what community means, and the different kind of histories and geographical kind of landmarks, and exploring what it means to live in a very particular community. And that's kind of really what I'm interested in.
Amazing. So then tell me about your social enterprise, because it's got quite a cool name. Is there a story behind the name?
Yeah, so his name's Dingy Butterflies. We're a CIC. So like I said, I moved up to Newcastle in 2000, initially Newcastle in 2001, and I moved to Gateshead in about 2005, I think. And I got really interested in where I was living. I kind of realised quite early on that I lived in the area, but I didn't engage with where I lived. So, I'd go to work, I'd come home, I may go to the park, but I didn't really know where I lived and knew the area. So through that, I did a PhD at Newcastle University, and I was interested, again, like I said, in community. And I was interested in how do I, as an artist, as a neighbour, as a resident, maybe as a community activist, how do I work within and support the community I live in through my knowledge, which is, like I said, in the arts and being creative. So that was kind of roughly what my PhD was about, kind of in a nutshell. When I finished my PhD, lived in Scotland for a short while, in a village called Huntly in Aberdeenshire, working for an arts organisation called Devon Arts. And they have this way of working called the town is the venue, where I very much work within the town itself, and the town becomes its kind of where it works. So I was interested in when I came back and started my PhD, I was interested in is that a model that could be used? Obviously, it's hard to transplant it directly, but could I take that model and try and fit it into how central Gateshead Benjamin Saltwell works, and where the area becomes kind of where we work, very much where we work, and work with artists and academics and organisations and the local people. So after the PhD, I thought, well, where do I go next, basically? What do I do next? And I kind of thought, I got a bit of money from Unlimited, and I started Dingy Butterflies, and again, the name is very much comes from the community. And I wanted to take what I'd learned in my PhD and kind of try and see if I can turn this into a social enterprise. So start the CIC, Dingy Butterflies. The name is actually a quote from, or comes from J.B. Priestley, who, when he wrote his book, An English Journey, I think in the 1930s, he came up to the Northeast. And I think most people say he was quite a grumpy man. He came up to the Northeast. He had a cold. He wasn't very happy. He visited Gateshead. He's very damning about the kind of town planning of Gateshead, which I think people still are. And he visited a community centre, or it was at the time, it was an educational settlement called Bensham Grove, which is now Bensham Grove Community Centre. And he sat in on I think it was an unemployed men's choir, I think. And in the book, he calls these men the dingy butterflies of the back streets. And he got really criticised for it. No, he thought he'd been demeaning to them. But I kind of think he's trying to say in there, they're beautiful, but they're dirty. It's kind of a beauty there. And I think in the book, he does kind of say, why are we treating people like this? This is in the 1930s. So nearly 100 years later, that question could still be asked. Why are we treating people the way we do? Why do we, people who are in need? So I kind of wanted to take that and kind of reclaim it for the community and be a bit playful with it. And it's a great, like I said, it's great. If people ask me what my business is called, they say that and they want to know why I've called it that.
So tell us more then about the social enterprise. What services or products does it deliver? Like, how are you guys funded? What is it that you do?
So we go for about 10 years. I only realised at our last board meeting I think it was, earlier this year, that it was nearly 10 years. So we had an event in April. It was April 2015 that we started. We've been funded mainly, so our work is kind of very much community arts. So we kind of looking back at kind of the old kind of interesting kind of how community arts is and how it used to be back in the 80s and previously. And we do a lot of our work is very much about working within the community, using arts and creativity, work with artists as well as academics and organizations to explore the local community. Quite interesting, this idea of deep mapping, where you kind of map an area through all the different aspects of it, whether it's geographical, whether it's storytelling, whether it's art, whether it's history, and you kind of understand the community through all these different aspects. We're very kind of issue-based as well, so we explore the issues that affect our community and think about through work with organisations, try and support their work. And we don't have a venue, so as you see, it's my house. And that was a very deliberate decision at the beginning when we first started, that didn't want to work from a venue and have like an art gallery or a space like that we wanted to work very much within the community. So we work with organisations in their spaces and we find spaces in the community. We've done stuff on the streets as well, so with artists doing more kind of performative stuff. But it's very much finding those places in the community and kind of I suppose asset-based to a degree, places that we can kind of set up and be within with closer to people, to go to people rather than expect them to come to us. And it's very much about working with people. So a lot of the work, I'm learning as well. Don't see myself as the expert or as the community kind of, gatekeeper or the person to come to. I'm very much kind of interested in exploring these things with people. I live here as well, so I want to learn as well. So a lot of the work we do, I'm kind of learning as well, and I want other people to kind of learn new ways of working and new ways of thinking. So the work we've been doing has been digital work. We've worked with schools. We've worked with, like I said, community organisations from, like I said, Bensham Grove Community Centre to asylum seeker refugee organisations to mental health organisations. It's very much about well-being as well, and exploring ideas that come very much from the community, hopefully, and the issues that may affect the community, but also celebrate it, I think, as well.
That's really cool. So tell us a bit more about the collaborations then that can you give us an example of one where you've worked with a local organisation?
Yeah, sure. So at the minute, we've got 3 projects on the go at the minute. One is working with Tyne Derwent Way, so down teams in Dunstan area, and we're working with the Tyne Derwent Way team, 2 artists to kind of come up with a number of workshops that can be co-created with people from the community around the history of the area and the people and the nature that can be found in the area. So work with Tyne Derwent Way, then that'll be spread out into local schools. We've also got a project called Bensham Bites, which is very much a collaborative project. So Bensham Bites is a food project exploring food poverty and food insecurity, but also hopefully supporting those organisations with the work they do. So for that one, we're working with quite a large group of organisations. So working with the Comfy Project, which is a asylum-seeking refugee organisation, working with a organisation called Herb Hub, who do a lot of stuff around allotments and gardening and well-being. Working with St. Chad's Community Centre, who have a community market, as well as the Jewish community. I should say Bensham has a large Orthodox Jewish community. So we're working with a group of young women with a group called the Chev, who work with young women with learning needs within the Jewish community. So it's very much about bringing these organizations together. And there's other ones as well that we're working with, and all have an interest in food, or all have an interest in nature and biodiversity and being creative with it and well-being, and seeing how we as a group of organizations working in a very particular area can support people in the community.
How big are you guys? Have you got 10 staff?
Well, I started, like I said, I started it in 2015. It's myself. We obviously have a board, so 5 other people. And we have a few volunteers. And like I said, we very much work with artists and academics. So Benjamin Bites, obviously, we have a group of people who come together from different organizations and we all work together. Same with Time Different Way, but it's just obviously us and them. But Benjamin Bites, like I said, there's about 6 or 7 different organizations, all with the kind of, if you like, the same aim and goal. And that's funded through an Awards for All and Gateshead Food Partnership. So that's a council organisation. So it's very much partnership working. And I think that's something that we've always do.
Okay, Ben. So I'm going to ask you then, we started off this conversation with the fact that you noticed that you were living in an area, but not necessarily engaging with it. And it sounds like you've gone full extreme to the other end. What's it like now? Because I think quite a lot of us live in that way, that where we live is quite separate to where we work. And the two things are probably kept that way. What's it like now being so connected to your local community? Are you feeling like it's a good thing? Is it something we should all be doing?
That's a good question. I think it's really helped me I think I was just interested in why, like I said, I live here, but I didn't really know the area. And I kind of I think when I started, I didn't realize how many other organizations of people are all trying to do very similar things, what I'm trying to do in a very small area. Maybe come from a different sector, maybe not from the cultural sector as I come from, but from maybe community work or mental health sector or well-being or, other sectors. But and I kind of thought, where are these people? And I think once I started kind of more or less just, if you like, walking the streets and knocking on doors and setting up meetings with organizations and just interviewing people as well from a PhD, I kind of realized there is so much going on. We all have the same aims and goals, is to support our local community. And a lot of similar themes. So it just kind of makes sense to me that we should be working together rather than this kind of silos. And I think it's easy for that to happen. But I think it's just, it just allows you to kind of understand that if someone does come to you in need from the community and they need to do something, or they've got a question, or they're in need for whatever reason, you can maybe point them to somebody maybe able to help them, and they know there's all these other things going on. What the council are doing in the area, and you can support them through saying, well, you should get in touch with that person or that organisation, and knowing that there are all these organisations all with the same aim, and it's just a case of contacting them and saying, why don't we try and work together? And I think that's very much, like I said, Benjamin Bites very much came from that, fix the food poverty situation, and people in need, we're all aiming for the same thing. So is it much better we work together rather than separately?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the challenge with this is that this could paint a beautiful utopia picture of what it means to work in collaboration and in partnership. Is it utopia, or are the challenges in working in this way?
Everyone's got the same aims and goals. Obviously, people have very different ways of working, and I think it's kind of finding that way of working that we can work together, and understanding that people have maybe slightly different aims or different kind of agendas. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. They're all good agendas, I feel, but it's kind of finding that way of working when you may work in a very different way. And obviously there's all the kind of issues that you need to make sure that everyone's on board and there's an agreement in place and everyone knows exactly where they stand in terms of a project. And I think, I'm talking about this idea of community as if it's a wonderful, great thing. And I think, as we know, there's a lot of communities, and Benjamin Salt was no different from any other community, that there are problems in terms of, especially in areas in the Northeast, around food poverty and poverty in general. I think Gates has got one of the highest child poverty in the UK or England at least. So how do you work with people to kind of, again, we can't solve it, we're an arts organisation, but we can support other organisations to hopefully make a difference. And I think it's making sure that people are all on the same agenda or same kind of go in the same direction, but they may have different ways of getting to that destination.
Yeah. I'm thinking then that the way that we always finish this podcast is to say that we've got an audience now of change makers just like you. And what is it that we can do to support you on your mission? Is there a call to action? Is there anything that we can do to support you?
When I read this question, I was thinking, what is there? And there's quite a few things, very recent things have come up and recent things that always, and I think everyone will have the same thing. Obviously, we're always looking for core funding. That's always the major issue. Funding. We're doing okay in terms of project funding, but core funding is always a problem. We find, I think that's probably the same for every organisation. I said earlier, we don't have a building, but we're now thinking we're interested in finding a building in the Gateshead area. So that's something we're exploring. But one thing we're interested in working with young people. That's something we haven't really ever cracked. We've worked in schools, but I think young people in terms of youth, young adults. So I'm interested if anyone's out, any organisations want to kind of explore work with young people in the Gateshead area, especially around food and nature and creativity, because that's our kind of main focus over the next few years. But I think one of the main things is, and this is from a recent, something I put on LinkedIn recently, is around how the Northeast is seen by national organizations. And I'm kind of wanting to kind of think about, is there other organizations that want to kind of come together and think about how we represent ourselves to the rest of the country? And is there a way, and I suppose it's definitely through yourselves, is there a way of meeting and discussing how we present ourselves to funders, national organizations as the Northeast and what we can offer? And I think there's obviously, there'll be other organizations who do that, but I'm kind of thinking from a more of a social enterprise, small business point of view, that the kind of work we do, is there ways of exploring that? So I also have another kind of day job. I do this part-time, and I have a full-time, a kind of part-time job as well. It's more salaried job. Not getting funding and finding out a lot of the funding goes to the south of England on a recent bid that was put in. And I'm kind of interested in how can we kind of say, actually, this is wrong. Why aren't we, the Northeast and the North in general, need to be represented in some way?
Yeah, it is. It is interesting. And there are a few organisations, so I'll have a chat with you after our chat now. But the funding disparity is definitely a challenge for geographical reasons, for gender issues. You know, it's a really interesting field to have a look at. I think the other thing to mention as well is that I think currently it's never been harder for social enterprises to access funding. And I think it's a difficult transition, I think, for a lot of social enterprises that have already been accessing funding for longer periods of time, to then really have to flip and start focusing on their traded model.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting times for sure in relation to funding. Fab. Well, Ben, thank you ever so much for your time, and we'll be sure to check out your links. We're going to be sharing those with everybody so that they can connect with you. But for now, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Ben touched on a few of my favourite topics during this interview. Number one, the importance of true collaboration, especially when working in a place-based approach. This means finding common ground and a common language to work together effectively. And I love the fact that he didn't gloss over the fact that organisations will have slightly different mission statements, slightly different ways of working. But ultimately, if you can find that shared understanding, anything is really possible from that collaboration perspective. And judging by their 10 years success, Ben has pretty much nailed this. So that was great. Secondly, he shared some of the challenges faced by social enterprises in relation to funding. And after our recording, Ben and I chatted through this a little bit more. And as they've got a growing traded income stream, the kick structure still feels right for them at this moment. But I just wanted to say that If you're feeling that you're running a social enterprise and you're being strangled because there isn't enough funding available to you, it might be that that structure isn't quite right for what you're trying to achieve. You might find that a charitable structure, so a CIO or a charitable company, might be better suited for the way that you want your organization to run. So that was just a bit of a side note on that point. His third section of the interview was all around how we're presenting ourselves as a sector from the Northeast. And I just want to reiterate his call to action at the end of our chat, because he would really love to hear your thoughts on this and to work out how we might take that conversation further forwards. So don't forget to connect with Ben, check out the links, and you can also subscribe to Chats with Changemakers for more brilliant interviews like this one. Don't forget to join the Northeast Changemakers community to connect with more wonderful people like Ben. Catch you next time.
If you've been inspired by what you've heard today, come and join our free Northeast Changemakers community to meet like-minded people and start your journey to changing the world.